Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. Democracy. Government by the people, exercised by elected agents under a free electoral system. It took 5 constitutional amendments and a Civil Rights Act to allow all of us the right to vote. Well, my guest today cares very much that you do vote. I'm delighted to be joined by the California Secretary of State, Alex Padilla. Nice to have you with us.
Hi, Maria. Great to be home.
Yay! Welcome home. Well, make yourself at home, because that's the most important thing. Very interesting. California, in fact, for this particular November election, was the first state to decide that every registered voter will, in fact, receive a ballot in the mail. Needless to say, that actually makes people a little worried, a little excited, a little happy, a little sad, a little. So what are the safeguards that you have put into place to make sure that all of those votes are going to be safely and accurately counted?
So absolutely. First, I guess the big picture, as you mentioned, free and fair elections are the bedrock of our democracy. It's how we elect our representatives at all levels of government. In California, we're very familiar with propositions and ballot measures, so a lot of policy is decided at the ballot as well in every election, and so therefore the access to the ballot is important. So every election as we prepare, it's about accessibility for voters and as well as security. Especially in the last few years, we've heard of cyber threats and others to our elections. And now on top of all that, how do we prepare for a November election that's also safe from a health perspective,
Sure,
given the COVID-19 pandemic? So, soon after a very successful primary election of March of this year, prior to the COVID pandemic and declarations of emergency, we did make the decision that we should send every active registered voter a ballot in the mail in advance of the November election. Vote by mail is nothing new in California. We've been doing it for decades. No excuse, vote by mail, as have other states, by the way. Red states, blue states, vote by mail, sadly, has become a little bit of a partisan debate of late. But vote by mail is secure, it's convenient, and it's going to be probably the safest option for people to vote this November and protect their health. We're also going to have a lot of in-person voting options for people who need it. A lot of people who need to go in person, whether it's to register to vote after the deadline and still cast their ballot, maybe replace their ballot if they lost it or made a mistake, maybe if they need language assistance. And so it's not a vote by mail only election. We do have the options, but vote by mail will be the first recommended option.
I'm going to back up just a slight bit because in getting ready to have this lovely conversation with you, I did my research, and there are already 5 states that are only vote by mail. So it's not as if this is a new, procedure. Literally 5 states that have always just done vote by mail, but for a long time. And then in this particular election, 22 states have already joined the idea that every registered voter should have their ballot sent to them via the mail. So I'm not really understanding why it's become a drama in any way.
Right. Well, we can get into that if you really wanted to, about who it is that's attacking the integrity of vote by mail and what their motivations may be. But here's what voters need to know, right? Vote by mail, it's not about Democrats or Republican. It's about being able to exercise your right to vote while keeping as safe and healthy as possible during the COVID-19 pandemic. For people who do have questions about vote by mail, because maybe they haven't done it before, or they're not as familiar with it, there's a number of security provisions that we have to protect the integrity of vote by mail, starting with the ballots themselves. Right? Think our currency. Right, very specific paper types, watermarks, other distinguishing features to make it hard to counterfeit ballots and rig an election that way. The vote by mail return envelopes. Voters who get their ballot in the mail also receive a return envelope with return postage prepaid. You don't have to scramble for stamps. But those envelopes come with unique barcodes for every voter to help confirm the identity of the voter and the ballot that's being returned as part of ensuring that people don't vote more than once in a particular election. And here's the big one. That return envelope has a special designated area where the voter has to sign. And the first thing that county officials do when they receive those envelopes is compare the signature on that envelope with the signature on file as part of that voter registration record to ensure the match, confirming the identity of the voter. If the voter forgot to sign the envelope or the signatures don't match, then the county will attempt to contact that voter to rectify any issue that there is. So there's a lot of measures in place to protect the integrity of vote by mail in our elections more broadly, but given how much more we're going to rely on vote by mail, both in California and across the country, it's important for people to have that confidence. And here's the last biggest piece, a brand new tool for voters statewide called Where's My Ballot? It's a very technical name for our ballot tracking tool. Voters can go to vote.ca.gov for a number of voting resources and tools, including Where's My Ballot? You can subscribe to receive email messages, text messages, or automated phone messages on the status of your ballot as it's working its way through the Postal Service, both on its way to the voter and on its way back to the county. Maria, imagine getting an ultimate alert saying your ballot was received and your ballot was counted. It's great for transparency, great for accountability, and I think great for peace of mind and confidence in the system.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds a little bit about some of these myths that need to be dispelled in order for people to have confidence in this problem. So the first question is the decision to actually send it out to every registered voter versus requesting a mail-in ballot, which has been the procedure in the past. Just efficiency, or what was the reason that that decision was made?
Well, first of all, we're not starting from scratch. You know, vote by mail has been growing in popularity, either one-time vote by mail or permanent vote by mail. We reached more than 70% of the ballots cast in the primary election were vote by mail ballots. So again, we're not starting from scratch. Recognizing the ongoing risk of the COVID-19 pandemic, the governor, the legislature, myself, leaders decided the best way to approach the November election is to automatically send every active registered voter a ballot in the mail, and that'll be the first choice and strongest recommendation for how to vote and protect general public health, voters, election workers, et cetera, but still provide the in-person option for voters who need it.
Okay, so you've discussed some of the safeguards in determining that the actual registered voter is the one that is voted. But what about the idea of perhaps undue influence within a home, you know, where a voter, normally when you're in a polling place, you're alone, you know, in the booth, you don't have any kind of input from any kind of pollster or anybody around you. How is that being addressed if someone has multiple people registered within the home? How are you not knowing that there's going to be undue influence within a home?
So, well, again, vote by mail is nothing new. So these concerns about what that vote by mail or vote at home experience looks like, we've been handling for decades. And if you look at, you know, complaints or suggestions or, you know, potential issues of, you know, undue influence, as you said, it's really not there. What is there is when people receive their ballots in the mail in advance of the election, there's more time for, brace yourself, civic dialogue.
There you go.
Right? Family members, friends, coworkers even, talking about what's on the ballot and how are you going to vote and why. You know, heaven forbid we have that time to inform ourselves and make a more informed decision as to you know, who we vote for, what we vote yes on, what we vote no on, those sorts of things. So it's actually, I think, been helpful for people to benefit from that experience and finally not being rushed. Right? A lot of people who show up to vote on election day, the later you go, there's probably a longer line. And once you're in that booth, yes, it's absolutely private, but you feel like you have to hurry to get through that ballot because there's somebody waiting behind you to do the same. When you get your ballot at home, you can fill it out at your convenience, at your leisure. And as long as you make sure to postmark it on or before election day, your ballot's going to count.
So you've already addressed the issue of there's not going to be any kind of fraudulent, duplicate, or illegal ballots being sent out because you have put safeguards in, the barcode, the signature on the envelope, you know, et cetera. But what about on your side when those votes get mailed in? You know, how is your office and all of the people that will be counting these votes, you know, how is that going to work?
Yeah, so I think it will serve us well if we also talk about some of the timelines that apply here. So on the outbound side, it's counties that administer elections, right? We oversee the whole state, but ultimately it's county elections offices that distribute ballots, collect ballots, count ballots, audit ballots, et cetera. So California law requires vote by mail ballots to go out to voters no less than 29 days before the election. So ample time, first week of October, start checking that mailbox. Ample
And if
time
you
for
don't get it,
and if you don't get it, contact your county. And
Okay.
as a backup, you can still have that in-person option on and before Election Day. But most active registered voters will get their ballot the first week of October. Fill it out again. We encourage sooner rather than later, but at your leisure, and you can mail it back. There's been questions about the Postal Service of late.
Yes,
And
I was
so
gonna bring that
here's
up.
what voters need to know. Current California law says as long as your ballot is postmarked on or before Election Day, it could even arrive 3 days after the election and still be counted. That's what we call a postmark +3 policy. For purposes of this November, we're extending that to 17 days after the election, just in case there's those Postal Service delays. The ballot has to be postmarked on or before Election Day, but we're giving it extra time to arrive and still be counted. And again, the great transparency and accountability of the ballot tracking system. So when the ballots do get to the county, everything is super accounted for. Again, given the barcodes, there's the vote by mail ballots, there's the ballots that were cast in person on Election Day or during the early voting period. Counties are open for observers to come in. That's how transparent the process is, to see ballots that are, even before they're being counted, the signature verification process for vote-by-mail ballots, the verification of registration first for people who participated in same-day registration. A lot of checks and balances, a lot of logistics, and that's why it takes as long as it does to finish counting ballots in California before we certify results.
Do we think that there might be, because of the fact that this is a unique scenario, that we're going to have to be more patient for the results of not just the major elections, but of all of these, initiatives that might be on our ballot, et cetera?
Yeah, patience is a virtue. Patience is a virtue. So yes, California has developed a reputation that it takes us a while to finish counting ballots. So here's been our experience. On election night, we have a pretty good sense of how most races are going to end up,
Right.
whether it's who won or which propositions won or failed. But for close contests and for final results, it takes a few weeks, right? Current California law gives counties about a month to finish processing ballots and certifying their results. What's different this time is there's a whole lot of other states that are increasing vote by mail significantly for the first time. Right? States like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Arizona, and others, they've had vote by mail, but not to this scale. So if the presidential contest is a little too close to call in a lot of other key states, we may not know the outcome on election night. As much as everybody wants to know immediately, if it's going to take a few days to get the final results, that's just the process at work. It's not the time to panic. It's not the time to worry. And it's certainly the time to not believe every conspiracy theory or lie about what's going on out there. Understand what the process is, and it's every legitimate ballot being counted, because that's respecting people's voting rights, and all the auditing procedures to protect the integrity of our elections. So we'd rather get it right than get it fast.
Agreed. There are still going to be in-person opportunities to vote, whether you want to drop off your ballot or whether you want to, participate in that particular process. But that has had to change as well. So how are the changes being incorporated? How are you doing? I know you were looking for polling places. I know that obviously volunteers is something that is at stake this time around, because the type of volunteers that you might have had in the past are not available to you this time. So how is that whole process rolling out? Because you've got this whole mail-in component, and now you've got this whole physical walk-in component.
Right, and so let's maybe start with, for all the people who do receive a ballot in the mail in advance, they recognize they have options for how to return their ballot. Through the Postal Service, right, no stamps necessary, return postage is prepaid. Any voter can deliver their ballot to any secure ballot drop box in the county convenient to you in the weeks leading up to the election, or you can walk it in, drop it off in person at any in-person voting location. For people who prefer that in-person voting, again, it's important to make the plan, know what locations are available to you. We'll have in-person voting for at least 4 days. right? So voting won't just be on Tuesday, November 3rd. Early voting will start Saturday before the election. So you can vote Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday at any location in the county convenient to you. Now, that in-person experience is also going to be a little different.
No.
Just like we can't go to the grocery store the same way anymore. Expect physical distancing and signage. Bring your mask. We'll have extra masks on hand for folks who forgot theirs. Think hand sanitizer, gloves, etc. All the public health measures to keep both voters and election workers safe. But that in-person is important to maintain, that in-person option for voters who need it.
And they're going to be large venues, are they not? I know Staples is one of them, and
Right, we're talking larger venues to accommodate that physical distancing. And they're not going to walk somewhere with all the voting booths side by side anymore. So we have been replacing a lot of the older voting locations with newer, larger locations, including some exciting places like a Staples Center and Dodger Stadium and Bank of California, where the LA Football Club plays. You know, a lot of colleges and universities are going to serve as voting locations as well. Try to keep everybody safe. But those sporting events, I have a feeling we're going to see some great selfies coming out of there.
Okay, so let's go to Where's My Ballot? Where's My Ballot is a really cool way to sort of, where's my phone? Find my phone, sort of track it. But this is an era in which people are hypersensitive about their data and their privacy and making sure that they feel comfortable and confident in what information is actually out there. So what are the security measures that are going in there to protect people's privacy? Because when I go in and I vote, you don't know me. You might have been the person that took my name when I first walked in, but that's it. So now what happens that now I'm tracking my ballot, and my ballot is very obviously attached to me.
Right. Well, again, it's a secret ballot at the end of the day. We know who voted, but we can't say who voted for who or how people voted on their particular ballot. The ballot tracking tool is simply that. People who subscribe to Where's My Ballot, their information is not going to be shared. It's not going to be sold. It's not used for any other purpose other than creating that ability for a voter to track their ballot through the process and for public confidence, get that confirmation that their ballot was received and counted. That's it. And so it's an option. It's not a mandate in the state of California, but I can tell you more than 750,000 people have already signed up. With all the attacks on vote by mail and the integrity of our elections, I think this is a great tool to provide people the peace of mind that their vote is counted and their voice is heard in the process while we maintain the security and privacy of their data and information.
So I have been asked on multiple social platforms, and I'm sure it's are you registered to vote? Have you checked to make sure that you're registered to vote? So in going through those templates, they do ask, my name, my address, and all that kind of thing. Are those safe and secure for me to go ahead and acknowledge that I am a registered voter online?
Look, well, there may be a lot of social media campaigns and organizations encouraging voter registration. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're hesitant at all or nervous at all, the best official trusted source of information is your county elections office and the Secretary of State. So we've made it easy for everybody to locate in one place all the information and resources they need to participate. Vote.ca.gov. We have the voter registration tool there at vote.ca.gov. We encourage people to verify their registration status. Make sure your record is up to date and current, so your county is mailing you your ballot at the right address. Right. If you need to update your registration or change anything, you do that on the same Register to Vote tool. Where's My Ballot sign up is right there. Cybersecurity information is there. We mentioned earlier, counties across the state are in need of additional poll workers. Right. You can find the poll worker sign-up tool at vote.ca.gov. So a lot of well-intentioned campaigns and initiatives out there, but if you want to be certain, go straight to the source, your county elections office or the Secretary of State.
Have you gotten a sense about how enthusiastic this particular election is going to be? I mean, obviously, I kind of joked when we were talking earlier, this is a crystal ball scenario. You can't really tell who's going to show up and vote. But based on registration, can you see if this is going to be an incredibly dynamic election or not?
Look, I think we're going to have a very strong turnout this November. I think the energy and the anxiety has been building up for years. Since the 2016 election, when we first heard about chatter and foreign interference in our elections, from 2016 to 2018, registration continued to climb significantly. 2018 was a record turnout election year. You look at our March primary, same thing, record registration rates and numbers and a record turnout in the March primary. It's been a very tumultuous several months since then between COVID and a lot of protests and demonstrations inspired by the killing of George Floyd and others. And so we see registration continuing to climb, and not substitute reasons, but additional reasons and stakes for the November election. So I am predicting a very strong turnout this November. Our job, again, has been to make sure that the November election is accessible, secure, and safe for everybody.
Have you noticed a particular demographic that seems to be registering? I mean, obviously, anecdotally, you hear that young people are really participating in numbers that they haven't in the past. Have you been able to gauge that at all, or just through word of mouth?
Yeah, well, both before COVID and since COVID, I can tell you this. The group of voters who have been eligible but unregistered have been disproportionately communities of color, young people, and lower income communities. So as registrations climb, it's those communities that are disproportionately being added to the rolls. So at the end of the day, it's making sure that our democracy is as inclusive as possible and as representative of the people as possible. And I think we're making tremendous strides here in California.
I know that you are a very forward-thinking person. You have an engineering background, you're technologically advanced, but with technology comes hiccups and problems. I mean, the primary, the March election had a few issues here in Los Angeles, and sadly, even with COVID, there was a glitch in the data with the COVID numbers that made Governor Newsom pause before he was able to, issue some mandates. So, are you worried about glitches in the system, or are there safeguards in place in case that might happen? Because with forward momentum, sometimes are unexpected issues.
No, absolutely. And so we're constantly doing, what we call scenario planning. What could potentially go wrong, and how do we make sure we have systems in place to mitigate against those sorts of things. So whether it's on the voter registration side, or being able to vote by mail, or voting in person, we have multiple options. We haven't put all of our eggs in one basket when it comes to administering the election. So one of the fail-safes, provisional ballots. If you show up to vote in person, your name's not on the list, or there's some sort of issue, the default backup plan is you can cast a provisional ballot. We'll verify the registration afterwards and still count the ballot if you're a registered voter. That's why we have same-day registration. If people missed a deadline or their record wasn't updated in time, you can show up in person, update your registration, still cast your ballots. So a lot of mitigation measures in place, but to your point about technology, it's what enables maybe improved reporting of results later, voter information on the front end, including registration. But when it comes to casting our ballots, paper, paper, paper. You will vote by mail, it's a paper ballot. Show up in person, you're still casting a paper ballot that we can count, recount when necessary, and audit as necessary to ensure the accuracy and the integrity of the results.
California being one of the last states to actually close its polls based on the time zone. How do you feel about our importance, especially, obviously there's lots of state, local issues that are at stake, but how do you feel about our importance on a national scale? Do you think we still have a voice there?
Well, I think we have a tremendous voice. Some people may not view California as a battleground state when it comes to the presidential contest, but it doesn't mean that we're insignificant. It's one of the reasons why we moved our primary up earlier, to be more influential in the primary and nomination process for the national landscape. Just our sheer size. A couple of years ago, people were looking at the outcome of House races in California to determine who would be in the majority in Congress, for example. So still many ways for Californians to significantly impact the national landscape, and not on an elections administration side, but on the political side. Hey, we may have a Californian serving as vice president depending on the outcome of this election. So California is still very, very influential.
All right, I'm going to jump in there then, because this makes that election and that potential outcome impact you. Your name has been thrown in and bantered about by taking Kamala's spot if, in fact, she is elected vice president. How are you feeling? Is that something you're even thinking about, or are you focused down on this particular election? Or, I mean, how does that resonate with you?
Well, look, it's certainly an honor to be in that conversation, have my name in that conversation. But if the last half hour hasn't made it abundantly clear, we are laser focused on the November election, making sure that we do everything we need to do to make sure it's as accessible, secure, and safe for everybody. Still a lot of work to do, and we're looking for a great turnout.
But you've been in public service since you were a wee lad. I mean, when did you ended up your first public office? What were you, 26?
26. Well, I mentioned it's great to be home. I started right here in the city of Los Angeles as elected to the city council in 1999. So yes, I've been in public office for a little bit more than 20 years. Enjoy public service and helping people.
What is it about public service that appealed to you in the first place, and how have you seen government adapt? Do you think government has become more receptive to the needs of its constituency, or do you think that government needs to readjust its direction?
You know, I get asked all the time, you know, how do you go from engineering to politics, right? My degree is in mechanical engineering.
Build it and it'll be better?
And I only half jokingly say, well, engineers are trained to solve problems.
Right.
Isn't that what elected officials are supposed to be doing? Half joking, but half not joking, because that's how I've been approaching my time on the city council, my time in the legislature, and my time as Secretary of State. You know, how can we make certain things better? Education, healthcare, transportation, our elections, right? I think our elections systems have been in the spotlight like they haven't been in a long time. Both the debate over voting rights, you know, in other parts of the country, you hear about the purging of voter rolls and how voter ID disenfranchises people, et cetera. In California, we're seeking to expand the franchise with a couple of measures on the November ballot. Also, issues of election security, right? It's not just foreign interference in our elections, there's cyber threats and other things, making sure that California is on the forefront of election security and access, because that's fundamentally how we strengthen our democracy and get to the government of the people, by the people, for the people that you mentioned at the beginning.
So let's get down to the practicals, the timeline of how all this should play out.
All right. Well, first of all, for voter registration, the sooner the better. Go to vote.ca.gov and register to vote or update your registration. There's a official voter registration deadline that's 2 weeks before the election. But if you've missed that, you can still show up in person and update your registration or register to vote and still cast your ballot at any in-person voting location. For actual voting, remember, every active registered voter will receive their ballot in the mail in early October. Counties will send out those ballots no less than 29 days before the election. And LA voters have a great resource in the Los Angeles County Registrar Recorder. They can go to lavote.net and have a lot of information there as well. Make a plan on how you're going to vote, by mail or in person, and to vote early if you can. More people who vote early is less people that we have to assist on election day.
And bottom line, be patient for results.
Be patient for results, nothing that we haven't seen in California before. We'll have a pretty good idea on election night, but give it a couple of weeks for final official results, especially for close contests.
And any kind of legitimate warnings if someone calls, if someone knocks, if someone sends something, you know, things that you can tell are not legitimate.
Yeah, so feel free to reach out to us or relay those observations to us, whether it's a knock on the door, a bad in-person voting experience, or even suspicious information on social media. You can call us. We have a voter hotline set up in the weeks leading up to the election, 1-800-345-VOTE, or again, go to vote.ca.gov, click the link, send us an email, and we'll help you.
Well, Secretary Padilla, it's been really interesting, delightful, and wonderful to have an opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you, Maria.
So
Don't forget to vote.
believe me, there's nothing like all those little stickers you get to put. We have a huge mirror filled with stickers, so it's wonderful. All right, well, you be well, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you. Stay well.
Thanks. And that's a wrap on this edition of LA Currents.